Welcome to Are You Local, a podcast about identity, self, and finding one's place away from home. My name is George. I'm an American-born Filipino who has been based in Singapore for 9 years. Throughout my life, I've lived in different places like California, Okinawa, and Manila. I created this podcast to help me uncover the meaning behind local. This episode was recorded in November 2020 with Eric Anaya, an American who has traveled to numerous countries. Welcome, Eric, to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Among all these countries that you've visited, let's just jump in. Which would you say is your least favorite?
Least favorite? So I would say that my least favorite country would have to be... I would say it would be like France in the wintertime. I'm not really I don't really like the cold that much. And I think that was one of the coldest places that I ever was at. It probably wasn't the coldest, but just given the time, I guess, in my life and the fact that I was there like in 1 January in particular, in Paris, it was pretty harsh. Just been in Singapore and Dubai prior to that. So basically when I was used to the heat, and so I went straight into the cold and it just wasn't delightful.
Which country is your most favorite?
I would say at the moment in particular, I'm caught between two. I would say definitely Japan for number one. I like Japan in the fall, winter, and in the spring, but I've had a really great winter there once where I spent a month, and while it was cold, it wasn't unbearable. I guess there was just many shops and many, establishments to go into that kept me warm, and you could find something warm to eat or, some kind of warm beverage to drink, which just brought happiness, of course. And actually the house I stayed at when I was there, they had this really large, deep bath where you could each night they had some minerals there and salts, bath salts and whatnot, and I got to take a very warm, nice bath each night.
Okay, you mentioned Japan. What's the other country?
I really like Singapore, maybe because I like the people who I go to visit there, and it just such as a long journey, in general, that it's delightful and magical to be there, I guess, in that sense. And it's just something about it that where, as soon as you hit the air outside, no matter if I come from, the US during winter or I come from the US during summer, you just get this feeling and this sense, and the air is palpable once you walk out of the airport.
You sort of describe Rachel Chu from Crazy Rich Asians when she's stepping out of Changi Airport and she's like, oh my God, is this real?
Exactly.
What drives you to see these places, to travel to these places all around the world outside the United States?
I think it was a fascination. Definitely as a kid, I didn't really get the opportunity to travel much as a child. I definitely wanted to travel, and my family, I don't know, we weren't it wasn't just in their goal to travel. I don't think people in particular in my family really like flying on planes, though they have done it. So they never really took me on a flight. I actually didn't get into my first airplane actually until I was 18, and I was flying to boot camp for the first time.
I just realized something when I asked you earlier, what is your most favorite country? You notably left out Italy and Mexico, which happen to be the two most recent places you've been to. How would you describe Italy and Mexico?
I was in Italy because I had really good friends who were actually moving back most recently because they weren't able to establish residency here in the US, and they were just tired of being in between. So they wanted to go back to his birthplace of Italy, where he grew up and his family is. And she actually was from Vietnam. We all met in college. So they went back to Italy, and they had 3 cats. And basically I helped carry over one of the cats on the airplane. Each one of us took one cat, so the total of the three.
Mexico, though, I mean, I'm really curious to know about this, about Mexico City in particular. You've been there a couple times in the past 2 years, I think. I thought you were going to be based there for a while.
So Mexico City actually was just a cheaper way to work remotely, and I basically thought about it as a long-term solution. I do like Mexico as a whole, and I love Mexico City. No problems about it. I think the only thing I started to run in there, problems I started to run in Mexico City was I suffer from allergies a lot, and the place is loaded with pollen, and also it has really poor air quality in general, and so my sinuses were just always in deep trouble. It's a beautiful place. I love it. I think the best time to go is during the summer when it's raining, because it's easier for me to breathe personally. It rains a little bit every day during the summer, so you still have sunny days, but you'll have 2 hours or so of rain, and then it clears up the air. But I went there just basically to, I guess, in some sense, to just get out of the U.S. It just started to become a very toxic place, I think, for me personally, and I just sort of needed some peace of mind.
Language-wise, you could already speak Spanish, right? Fluently?
I would say no. I understand more than I can speak, but I can definitely order food and drinks in Spanish with no problem. I think when it becomes getting into a more detailed conversation, it becomes a challenge.
Tell me about your household. I mean, since we're talking about Spanish, you grew up in a...
No, I definitely did not grow up with any Spanish speakers in my house. My father was my father's parents were born in Mexico. My father actually was the first child of my grandparents, his parents, that was born in the United States. And so I never really grew up with my father, but my mother is Filipino and white American, I guess. With her father being from Cebu, and who I never really got to know. And mainly my grandmother, who is a white woman originally from Louisiana, but had lived in California since the 50s, is kind of the person who mostly raised me with feeding me Filipino food, or at least what I thought was Filipino food.
You've been to so many places around the world. Here's a title question. How would you define the meaning of a local person, or being local?
I think that one could be a local if they've lived in a place enough to understand the goings and comings of what happens in that place. Some person could be a national born and not really know, not really know too much about what goes on, so I think as long as you have this passion and maybe you've been there for a while. I couldn't say that you could go like within 1 or 2 years and say you're a local. I mean, maybe you could, maybe it's possible, but I think over time, and definitely you'd have to have like a passion for the place and an understanding to be a local.
Where would you consider yourself local?
I feel like I mean, definitely the Bay Area I know pretty well. New York probably as well.
What's your advice for someone who is moving to a new country, a new city for the first time, and they want to integrate? I mean, based on your experience doing this over and over again, several times in your life.
Know the location you're going to. First of all, pick an area you definitely want to be in that you can also, I guess, afford. And work your way around. Like, I continually walk everywhere, and I don't really ride like public transport unless I have to, or take Ubers or anything. So I generally pick in the whole time that I was recently in Mexico City, I never took an Uber other than from the airport and back. I walked every day, every place I went to. And I think that's important, just to get the familiarity of the place in which you're in. I also think that, you just kind of find a place that you feel like you you fit in that you like. Maybe it's a cafe, maybe it's a restaurant, maybe it's a bookstore, and just go there every day and make friends with the people and learn something about them and network. And yeah, I think those are important things.
If this pandemic didn't happen, where would you be right now?
I would have stayed in New York, but had traveled again to at least Italy and probably Singapore.
How about the Philippines?
Yeah, I definitely. I'm kind of on this trek to find my family there. I do have I've done this thing called 23andMe, which is a genetic test, and I'm discovering a lot of my Filipino cousins, who were some of them who are older. I guess they're all sort of older, but one person in particular I've connected with is an older. He's like my third cousin. He's an older Filipino man, maybe in his late 50s, and he was born in Cebu, and he lives in Ottawa, Canada now. Or he immigrated really early on in his life. But I'm basically trying to track back my lineage there. So that's my goal, is to eventually go to Manila, of course, but find my family in Cebu.
I hope that journey leads you to find some answers and also to enjoy what the Philippines has to offer. Eric, I want to thank you so much for your time joining this podcast, and hopefully we could hear from you again in the future episodes.
Definitely. Thank you for having me.